I've been sitting on this review for a while now because I wanted to give a more long-term review, I suppose. I wanted to make a first impressions video, but grew disinterested on the idea since I really just didn't find much value in making it anymore. But I think that I'm finally ready to talk about the Nintendo Switch OLED. I had an original Switch and decided to upgrade to the Switch OLED from there, so I will also talk about my experiences in that regard too. So let's go ahead and dive right in. This video is sponsored by PRIVADO VPN. This is one of the easiest to use VPNs that I have gone through because it just consists of a little tab around the bottom of your screen where you can do so much. Privacy is really going to be the name of the game here, since your activity will not be logged. You can change the country and city that you're operating from to get access to foreign Netflix shows, and it really is as easy as picking another country and pressing the button on the bottom. So click on the link below in order to support this channel and choose the plan that's best for you. So that's going to be PRIVADO VPN. Experience what the world has to offer from the comfort of your home. So when it comes to specifications, this Nintendo Switch is almost identical to the last one. Now, the CPU is still exactly the same Tegra model found in the version 2 Nintendo Switch. You also have the same amount of RAM at 4 gigabytes. You do get 64 gigabytes of storage, which is doubled of what it used to be back with the original Switch and even the updated one. And the same 4.5 to 8 hour battery life that is rated for, but I really wanted to say that around 4.5 really is much more accurate. So the specs are mostly the same, which is such a shame since we all wanted a more powerful Switch. So before we get into the full review portion, let's go ahead and talk about the things that did actually change about this device. Obviously, the display is absolutely beautiful, even if it does still run at 720p. This is still perfectly fine. The new OLED panel really goes a long way in giving you much nicer colors than you might expect from the original Switch, with zero backlight bleeding, really. I really love the screen here, and I think that they made the right choice in gaming when it comes to going with an OLED display. The speakers are now supposed to be more powerful, and even the speaker grills are longer, which does set your expectations pretty high, but there are comments to be made about this shortly, so I am going to wait until then. The body also looks different in general, as it seems to have the same design, but upgraded to look sleeker, and it definitely shows. From the buttons, the exhaust design, the game cartridge tray, and especially the kickstand. These are all things that have been revised, and that kickstand is way better than the one that we got before. Now, it's got a Surface Pro style kind of kickstand with the micro SD card slot still remaining underneath it, but now it does feel more accessible. It's nicer. I can adjust it to my heart's content and trust that it will not fall over. This is actually a really good kickstand for it. And also remember how the Switch never really had Bluetooth capabilities for headphones or anything like that, but only controllers. But now we do have a Bluetooth chip that supports wireless functionality with any pair of Bluetooth headphones, and I absolutely love that. Finally, the Nintendo Switch is catching up to the PlayStation Vita. So there have been a lot of changes from the original and even version 2 Switches. All of these changes brought to the Switch are absolutely welcome, but all of these things are really just quality of life improvement. It's missing a spec bump to allow for more games to run better, and I'm going to talk about which games I play that perform poorly and others that run great a little bit later. So have these changes really made a significant difference in how I feel about the Switch in general? In many ways it has, but I can't really help but to think that these were things that we should have had since day one, to be completely frank. This should have been the original Switch, since all of the tech that it features has already been available for quite a while, long before the release of the original Switch. Things like the kickstand do make a pretty big difference with use in handheld mode, or I should say tabletop mode for sure, especially if you're playing in bed, which is usually easy to topple, but this one always does remain standing. The display is really just about perfect, and you are very unlikely to experience OLED burn-in. I would buy without that concern being a factor, personally. And now the new way that the buttons have been set up is also going to be very nice too, and the new speakers are there. And besides the performance, this is probably the most disappointing part about the Nintendo Switch OLED. I really wanted better speakers on the Switch from the beginning because the first ones were not really good, not even on their loudest setting for the most part. Now we have larger speaker grills and more sound. Sure, they get a little bit louder, they are a little bit clearer as well, and they are a little bit less tinny. Have a listen. Unfortunately, I don't really have the old Switch to compare it to anymore, but this really isn't much of an improvement. The speakers feel about the same honestly, and it's when you pay close attention that you notice the audio difference, and well, this is just disappointing, honestly. So one of the features that don't really get talked about often that just got brought over exclusively to the Switch OLED is the ability to connect wireless headphones. This is a simple process that just involves a usual or casual pairing procedure. That's literally it. So have you paired Bluetooth earbuds or headphones to your phone before? It's exactly the same process. The experience of using wireless headphones with the Switch, well, it is really cool because you don't have to carry a separate pair of wired headphones anymore with you. It's just to be able to play outside on your commute with audio without bothering other people or anything like that around you. It works very well too, because depending on which headphones you have, they can still get very loud, which offers a lot of flexibility for audio levels. I'm actually quite grateful to have this feature here. We definitely should have had this since day one, and it's so sad that I'm celebrating this at all. It's kind of like celebrating a new feature on an Apple product that has been brought over to Android for a long time. It's just not really something that we should be giving the company credit for. The PlayStation Vita had this feature back in 2012, and the fact that the Switch was lacking it in 2017, and we didn't even get it until 9 years after the Vita's release, and 4 years after the Switch's initial release, is incredibly sad to think about, because it's kind of pathetic. Now let's talk about how the screen looks like in different kinds of games, and even how the Switch is performing in general. Well, with something like, let's say, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, the colors really make a difference as everything feels like it pops way more. Not to mention that it has very good blacks here, with things that are black really being pitch black thanks to the OLED display. It's genuinely beautiful, but it doesn't really apply for every single game out there. So not really every game will look better, which was a surprise to me, honestly. So something like Shin Megami Tensei 5, surprisingly, doesn't really have too much black in it. And because of the graphics settings for this game, it does kind of feel like you're still using the old panel in a sense. Like things just look maybe a little bit brighter than they should. However, this is still nitpicking a little bit because usually when transitioning between places, you do notice those rich blacks. This game doesn't really get many opportunities to show off the beauty of the Nintendo Switch OLED display, so do be wary here. However, most games I tested looked amazing on the Switch OLED screen. Games like Super Smash Bros., Final Fantasy X, Mortal Kombat 11, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and many more will definitely benefit from this new panel. That is without dispute. Now regarding performance, you are getting the same experience, even if games do look better because of the colors. You still get your little crashes in Kakarot, but you get to see them in prettier colors, I suppose. And that should pretty much sum up this section, but just about any game that performs well or alright on your current Switch will perform the same here, but will look nicer. At least that's the expectation, but it's really just the colors that are going to look better. It's not really a sharper display or anything like that. Now the screen does also get insanely bright, so you do have a lot to work with here. So when it comes to, let's say, docked performance, well, you can also expect about the same really. And this time you don't get the benefits of OLED unless you have an OLED TV, but you don't need the Switch OLED for that anyway. You do get a new black and white dock that looks very nice and has the same ports as the last one, except that one USB port was replaced with an Ethernet port, which I know a lot of people will appreciate. There isn't really much to say about this dock, besides the fact that it does look much nicer, and dock performance for games should be what you expect by this point. The same thing, so this isn't a magical dock to fix performance issues, unless the old one already took care of you in that department. So I've been harping on this for a while now, but I still feel like we need to have a conversation about the Switch OLED's performance. I talked about it rather extensively already, but I wanted to be just a little bit more concise with my thoughts. The performance is disappointing, and to be honest, I don't really think that there will be a Switch Pro, nor do I think it should exist either. This is because the Switch is already 4 years old at this point, actually closer to being 5 years old at this point because it came out in March. This review is being released in December of 2021. The next thing that makes sense to come is just the next generation of Switch handhelds, but generally speaking, there is a lot of missed potential with the Switch and even the Switch OLED. There are just so many games that could help justify the price of the OLED. Such as if we got something like Persona 5, which does have a lot of blacks in it, and I am confident that it would look stunning on this display. But that's just me being a bitter JRPG fan, which the Switch does already have a lot of, in all fairness. But most importantly, this chip is starting to show its age. With a lot of games, we don't really get flawless performance either, because we have stuttering in a lot of games, frame dips, as well as artifacting. Switch games just don't really look very good when docked anymore, and especially not on a 70-inch TV like this one, which definitely doesn't help matters, since this is a 4K TV as well, when you can really see the flaws in a rather large screen. This is going to be the case in the vast majority of games, and it's mostly because of the Switch only being able to do so much. We shouldn't have gotten a hardware upgrade in terms of the CPU, and there is zero excuse for what we ended up receiving instead. So when it comes to the battery life, it is rated to last between 4.5 hours and 9 hours, but I would never really claim that it actually lasts that long with every game I play. So 4.5 to 5 hours is really more accurate, and no one can really change my mind on that. Don't get me wrong, battery life is still pretty decent, and I'm not knocking it for its true performance or anything, but only for the advertised numbers. In conclusion, the Nintendo Switch OLED isn't worth the money to upgrade, but I'm sure that you already knew that. None of these things honestly warrant an upgrade, even from the first-gen Switch. It's just not that different of an experience, even if you mostly play in handheld. But if you wanted to buy a Switch, then don't be a fool and only look at this model, even for the handheld play, because it gives you the best of everything in that regard, and then it will actually be worth the money. Performance in docked mode is no different from the original Switch either, even with the new dock, which doesn't really offer anything new in terms of performance, and it's really just going to give you that Ethernet port, which is mostly relevant if you're going to be gaming online a lot, but it's really mostly just going to be an aesthetic change. That's really it. This is a great piece of hardware, but there are too many missed opportunities to ignore. So would I recommend the Nintendo Switch OLED? Only if you don't already have a Switch and want one. Otherwise, it really isn't worth the hassle, especially since you should be able to find an original Switch used at a decent amount cheaper, to be completely frank. But in spite of all of that, I have to be honest, I love my Nintendo Switch OLED. I made that upgrade that I'm telling you not to make. I don't regret doing it. However, that's from the perspective of somebody that does this as a side hustle, I suppose. So I did have a financial incentive for wanting to purchase a Nintendo Switch OLED. If I didn't have this channel at all, then I would not have a Nintendo Switch OLED on me whatsoever. It simply would not be worth it. Even though I do really like it a lot more over the original, it's not that different. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I do hope that this review was helpful to you. However, if you do still want to purchase a Nintendo Switch OLED, then I will be making sure to leave affiliate links down to Amazon in the description, as I would very much appreciate it. There's also going to be a Best Buy link, which is going to be done through Narrative, so I would very much appreciate it if you ended up using that link instead if you want to buy from Best Buy on the other hand, because either way you would be supporting the channel quite a lot by doing so, and that really does go a long way. It definitely helps in being able to get more review units of more things that you guys are interested in watching or hearing about. So with that said, again, very much appreciate it. Same with ABUNDA. I know that something like this is kind of expensive, so ABUNDA is going to allow you to just finance it all throughout. so that way you don't have to pay for it completely outright. It's just going to help you manage things a little bit better. So I probably recommend that method. Links to that down below. Again, any of these links would very much help out the channel a lot. So I would appreciate that a lot. And I would love to give a very special thanks to all of our patrons, beginning with the tier 3s, which are going to be Saada, Wazel, and Omar. Seriously, thank you so much for all of your support, because it really does go a very long way. Now, onto the tier 2s coming right up. And this is super important. I would just like to give a very special thanks to all of our patrons, which are going to be listed right here on the screen. Again, a massive thanks to you all for supporting us to help us create the kind of content that we bring to you on a day-to-day basis. And thank you so much for supporting the Tech Summit podcast as well. And just remember that if you would like to be a part of this community too, and then do make sure to check out the links to our Patreon, where you don't only get bonus episodes of our podcast, but you also get automatically entered into one of our monthly giveaways of a tech product that we have reviewed that is of at least $50 in value or higher. So links to that down below. So don't forget to follow me on Instagram, where I do post every now and then, and on Twitch, where I do stream much more often. There's actually a schedule there. It's usually on Fridays and Saturdays. But with that said, thank you so much for watching tonight's video, tonight's review. And this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you again. Have a wonderful night. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, let's have a discussion. Enjoy.